So what has been India's stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict? In the post-independent India, Mr. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi's stand was that India was staunchly pro-Palestine, as Mr. Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi opposed religious exclusivity and supported the Palestinian cause. Even in the United Nations, India voted against the partition of Palestine and Israel's admission to the United Nations, but recognized Israel in 1950 after Turkey and Iran did so. During the era of Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, there was support for Palestine. During Indira Gandhi's rule, India continued its support for the Palestinian struggle, elevating the PLO to the sole legitimate representative of Palestine. Even it had strong ties with Yasser Arafat, and India even hosted the NAM summit in 1983, emphasizing solidarity with Palestine. But over the period of time, the dynamics have now changed. The critics, after this full support of Palestine was shown by the Indian government, within India, the critics raised concerns about its pro-Arab stance given the Arab countries' neutrality during India's wars with China and Pakistan. India recognized Israel finally in 1992, establishing full diplomatic relations after the end of the Cold War and BJP's rise to power. Now, there have been significant events in the last couple of decades when Israel has been a strong ally of India, and the first such instance was in Kargil conflict. During the Kargil conflict in 1999, Israel provided crucial military support, strengthening bilateral ties with India. But what has been the stance of India, or what has been the relations of India-Israel in the last 10 years? Prime Minister Narendra Modi's approach has balanced India's ties with Israel and Palestine. He visited Israel in 2017, signaling a shift in the focus and what we now know as de-hyphenation. Mr. Modi achieved a de-hyphenation of the relationship by separately visiting Palestine in 2018. Now, what has been the wider regional engagement? That India has deepened ties with Israel and West Asian nations like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Qatar and Iran over the past decade. But with this war which has now broke out between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, the diplomatic tight spot India finds itself in, because the recent hostilities, India also has strong ties with Israel as well as with Palestine. India also has strong ties with all the pro-Israel countries as well as the anti-Israel countries. And also why India finds itself in a tight spot, because India is trying to have good economic relations in the Middle East, but in this current situation where the situation is unfolding even now on the fourth day of the conflict, it will be very tough to choose side, though Indian Prime Minister has voiced his strong support for Mr. Netanyahu and Israel's fight against terror, but still the dividends are still at stake. India had hoped to benefit from the newfound peace in the region with Abraham Accords and multiple Arab countries joining hands with Israel or renewing their diplomatic ties. So India also thought that it can gain out of it, and we know there is a group called I2U2, India, Israel, UAE and US, and multiple such forums were announced where India was part with Israel. India and Israel shared platforms, but now it will be quite tough for India to take a unilateral stance, because India has good relations with Iran. Iran is seen as a primary enemy of Israel. India has good relations with Saudi Arabia, and even Saudi Arabia has now voiced its support for Hamas. So in this developing situation, it will be quite a sort of tough task for India to meddle through it, to show that it still stands with the Palestinian cause, because since 2018 till today, India has given more than $23 billion to Palestine through the UN aid.